everyone. Welcome to the U.S. Department of State Global Innovation Through Science and Technology, or GIST Innovation Talks on Global Investment Trends in Latin America. My name is Samer Youssef. I'm a program officer at VentureWell, the main implementing partner for the GIST initiative, and I'll be your host for today. We have a great panelist with us today for the GIST Innovation Talk, Juliana Garaizar, who has an accomplished and impressive career in global investment. Juliana is the launch director of the Houston Greentown Labs, a board member of the Angel Capital Association, and the president of the Business Angel Minority Association. We're excited to have you with us today, Juliana. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Summer. This is great.
And my introduction is only scratching the surface. So please just share a little bit with the audience about your experience in investing and also just engagements with the GIST initiative.
I'm originally from Spain. I started my career in Singapore doing international trade for the Embassy of Spain. Then I started working for Citigroup as a project manager for Latin America in Singapore, and then traveled with them also through Europe and Japan. And I decided that I needed to do something more impactful than banking. That's when I decided to go back to school to do an MBA at London Business School. And over there, that's when I decided to gravitate towards the entrepreneurship major, did finance. I did a stint at the Berkeley High School of Business for 3 months on an exchange program, discovered Silicon Valley, and there hasn't been any day that I regret that decision. You know, I totally got hit by the entrepreneurial bug. And after that, I was recruited to manage an innovation center in the French Riviera, and then an angel group that was extremely international. So that's how I got acquainted with the angel investing world. Via Business Angels in the French Riviera, we had a lot of international members who suddenly started saying like, hey, we need to invest in deals in our home countries. So we ended up investing in deals in Spain, in Bahrain, in Turkey, in China, in Latin America. We invested in E-Trade. And some of these people said, like, let's even further and start creating other angel groups around the world. So I'm one of the international founding members for Galata Business Angels in Istanbul, for We Angels in Chile. And I helped many other angel groups form around the world, like Resermas in Spain and many others. So 10 years ago, I moved to Houston. Then I decided to do the Kaufman Fellowship, which is a leadership in VC program. I decided to do my end of fellowship project in bridging the gender gap in investing. So I discovered Trish Postello and Portfolia. Trish is actually the CEO Emeritus for the Kaufman Fellow. She was the initial CEO, and then she stepped out to do the Portfolio funds. I've been involved in them, trying to bridge in the gender gap in investing ever since. And now we just raised a fund that is called the Rising America Fund, investing in Black and Brown founders and also LGBTQ founders and companies that are addressing those markets. Back in Houston, I ran the Houston Angel Network for 5 years, and then the Texas Medical Center Venture Fund. And now I am president of BAMA. I think you talk a little bit about that. It's the Business Angel Minority Association. So making sure that we also bridge the minority gap in investing. And I just came out of stealth mode after 6 months working to launch Greentown Labs in Houston. Greentown Labs is the biggest clean tech incubator in North America. And we will be soon opening an incubator in Houston in Q1 2021 to start with the energy transition for Houston and hopefully the world.
Thank you so much for that. And I really wasn't exaggerating when I said it was the tip of the iceberg. I didn't know it was possible for somebody to live in every country in the world in one lifetime. But I think you're probably one of the closest people.
I've visited 60. I've counted, but lived, I think it's been 5.
That's impressive. That's my goal. And congratulations on the Greentown Labs launch. I know you've been working really hard on it for the past couple of months. You've kind of touched across a variety of different countries and landscapes as it comes to investing. But I'm just curious to hear about what trends are you most excited about in relation to cross-border early stage investing across Latin America?
So cross-border is something that has been always very dear to my heart. You know, when I started angel investing in Europe, cross-border was a must. You know, our countries are so small that if you don't do cross-border, it's kind of, impossible to have a diversified portfolio. So we were very acquainted with the different tax regimes, different laws, how to invest in very different countries. And when I moved to the US, I assumed that it would be kind of the same thing, and I was very much taken aback when I saw that many US investors were interested in cross borders, but wouldn't take the leap of faith of investing in companies that didn't have a US company. Okay, so they would say like, yes, I'm interested. I think the market is great, but then why don't we wait till you set up shop in the US and then I will become your first US investor? So that was something that, was a little frustrating for me. And when I was asked to be part of the board of the Angel Capital Association, I really took a lot of time and effort to try to figure out how to make cross-border in ACA and relate ACA to other key ecosystems and organizations that are doing cross-border to see how we could bridge that gap. So, in Latin America specifically, there's been for the past years a lot of efforts in doing cross-borders investing. NXTP Labs has been crucial with their funds. They are set up in Uruguay, but invest in more than 5 Latin countries. There's Chile Global Angels with Jamie Riggs, who's been leading the effort in Chile, and they've come a lot to ACA events, and they created with other groups within Peru and Colombia the Alianza de Ángeles del Pacífico, so Pacific Angel Alliance, and they've started to do a lot of cross-border. Scala with Marcelo Roca, and it's a little bit like the ACA for Latin America, is doing a lot of education in terms of how to implement angel networks and how to syndicate deals. And of course, our closest neighbor, Mexico, and my husband is from Mexico, so I'm very motivated to do more cross borders with them and with the GIST program, who's been inviting me already twice to Mexico to be a trainer in the GIST program, which has been an amazing program. Cross border in Mexico is like a day to day, angel groups like Hernán Fernandez with Angels Rangers and Artifacts Angels in Chihuahua, and you have Israel Pons with Angel Nest. They are all looking at companies that have already either a company that has been set up in the US, so you can actually directly invest in the US, or companies that from the get-go are eyeing the US market. So things are really evolving, and finally I could see that the interest from the US is growing and is I would say reciprocating the interest from Latin America into the US. I think one of the reasons is because more and more companies have that are Latin American companies have already a global perspective from the get-go. So that's something new. They don't think first about going to their Latin America country first, and then maybe to Mexico as a stepping stone to the US, and then finally the US. Now we see more and more companies that, are designed to be global and set up, their own USC corporation from the get-go, so that a lot of investors from all over the world can invest in a US corporation, but still those funds would be dedicated to a team that is totally or partially in Latin America. So I think investing in Latin America is finally becoming really, really interesting. There's more and more funds that are eyeing Latin America. And Hernán Fernandez told me last time I was in Mexico with the GIST program that we had Sequoia and Andreessen Horowitz coming to Mexico for a panel because they wanted to see more deal flow from Mexico and Latin America in general. So there's more and more interest, I think, because first of all, the technology is there. The entrepreneurial ecosystems are growing and very young and vibrant. And of course, they're very resilient, and they're also very capital efficient. So with much less money, you can get much, much further. So those are things that are, of course, very, very interesting.
Those are really exciting trends. And I think you touched on a couple pieces of one, the capital efficiency and the innovation that's happening in these markets, but also how globalized these markets are and these startups are from the jump. And they're really looking externally, and now it's making investors within the US more interested and excited to engage with them. And I actually want to dig into a point you brought up about the GIST and ACA partnership. When we took you down to Mexico City, I had the privilege of traveling with Juliana twice to Mexico City for a GIST investors training. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about some of the similarities and differences you noticed between the two countries and their investment trends, and how you see that continuing to grow as we move forward and become more interconnected.
Yeah, so one of the things that struck me most with my trips to just to Mexico was the fact that the angel groups there are much younger than the U.S. groups, which I think it's very inspiring to see that a lot of angels there are not waiting till their mid age, after they have their midlife crisis to say like, oh, I need to do something about my legacy now that I've made my career, and now it's time to give back. These people want to be engaged from the get-go, and they want to get educated into angel investing no matter what kind of money they have available, and I think that's the way to go. And I see that trend starting to work in the US too, where we're trying to activate younger and more diverse angels and letting them know that any impact is good in terms of how much money you allocate to your investments. And that is also much more than money. In many cases, money is the least of the concerns. Contacts and experience that the angels can bring forward might be much more valuable than the money itself. So seeing such a young crowd makes me believe that the future of angel lies in Mexico and in LATAM. Many of them have been educated or have lived in the US. So it's pretty impressive to see how many of them have investments in the US already. Because I think in the past, there's been the preconception that, US investors were needed in LATAM, and that we needed US money. And actually, you realize that there's so many wealthy individuals in LATAM that are actually investing quite a lot in the US. So, I think that the trend is actually indicating the opposite. And I think a lot of US investors have realized that they were missing out in very cool technology and very cool investors who know what they're doing and have already great connections in the US. So that was one of the trends that struck me the most. The second trend is how committed they are to impact. I would say 2 out of the 3 investors that I met there were somehow investing in impact, have put together an impact fund, and that was really nice to see. I don't think we have the same kind of percentage of impact investing in the US yet. So seeing how committed they are to investing and the social aspect of it is really encouraging also for me. And last but not least, I could see a lot of amazing tech that, I don't think people would expect to come LATAM. And, we always had like a couple of real case reviews and due diligence. One was with Salus Holding and Institutos Salus. They were putting together this nurse training to make sure that, they were tackling the nurse shortage. And then actually, it was pretty good to see that, you had a US lady running that initiative, and that actually nurses can get certified in Mexico to work in the US. And that is a huge opportunity for the shortage of nurses in the US. So, so many opportunities that people are not even aware of that could be a much cheaper, more efficient version of what we've been trying to achieve in the US, and really makes a lot of sense. So huge opportunities every time I go there.
Definitely, definitely. And Salus Holdings I was also really impressed with that startup, just by how much traction they'd already gotten at the point that they were raising money. And you see, to your point of capital efficiency you brought up earlier, but also the focus on impact. And especially today, with obviously the world's shifted as far as markets, as far as education, healthcare, work. In response to this pandemic and how life has shifted, what are you seeing within early stage investment trends or startups as people are pivoting their businesses or their investment thesis to respond?
Regarding the pandemic, I think there's been a lot of different reactions from early stage investors. There are some that are still in denial mode and, thinking that the world is going to change back to what it was pre-COVID, and trying to wait it out. And in some cases, they don't feel comfortable still investing in companies that they haven't been able to meet face to face. Some others that have become too opportunistic and really are trying to take advantage of, trying to get prices down for valuation and really take advantage of entrepreneurs in these times. And finally, they are the ones who are trying to do the right thing and really put more money into work now when it's most needed and be more active. And these companies have taken a very much an approach in times of crisis where they decided to go for a triage approach, like when you have an emergency in a hospital, where they decided to go for, okay, those companies are dead, non-recoverable. These companies are doing great because somehow the pandemic is benefiting them. And those companies in the middle are the ones we need to focus on. So because they need extra help, because they're trying to pivot. And in many cases, it's also about the fact of having this sounding board. A lot of companies are going through a huge crisis in terms of identity, and they need more than ever to have the investor there as a backup in terms of the pivot, but also in terms of mental health, because there's decisions that they need to take that are very hard, furloughing people or deciding to get rid of people or being on really emergency crisis mode in terms of cash and what they need to do. So investors are much more engaged with those companies. And I think, in some cases have been totally instrumental in the survival of these companies. In terms of new investments, there's a lot of opportunities out there that suddenly came available. I would say that companies that were already fundraising decided to keep their rounds open for longer because they decided, wow, we might need more money now because we don't know if our path to market is going to be as short as we expected. So companies that had most of their round filled by VCs, suddenly they decided to open them to angels. So suddenly angels are having access to deals that would be more in the VC space and they never thought they would have access to. I really think that angels are focusing now on, of course, markets that are going to do well or going to be resilient during the pandemic. Anything that has to do with telehealth, of course, is a very big win. Telehealth was there for a long time, but never as used as before. So, of course, telehealth mixed with anything that has to do with wearables, because now we're going to start monitoring more things, and not only monitoring, but with the AI, try to predict what things are going to happen to the health. So be more on a proactive mode instead of reactive in terms of health. Of course, anything related to EdTech, because we don't think we're going to have people going to school the way it was anytime soon. Teleconference systems. I was very lucky to invest in Zoom with a Kaufman Fellows Fund. So that was an investment that happened before the pandemic. And, we're very glad that we knew that it would be a good company, but we never thought it would be such a good hit. And of course, anything that is basically B2B is going to take less than a hit than B2C, because, markets now, consumer markets are, having a lot of up and down because of the pandemic and the fact that people are trying to be more mindful of consuming certain kinds of things. So Those are the main areas we see that people are focusing on. At the beginning, there were mixed feelings about clean energy and clean tech. Some people said that things that we were trying to do would take longer to take place, but I was very happy to see that in terms of the big oil and gas companies might have cut down in cost, but never in green energy. So things are still advancing, and I really think that at least in Houston, where we see a big oil and gas downturn, we can see that clean tech and clean energy is part of the solution for recovery for Houston. And Houston really believes in engaging with the energy transition as a part to diversify and be less oil dependent. So a lot of good things coming.
Well, first and foremost, congrats on investing into Zoom. That was a great move. But also, you touched on a variety of different sectors that you're saying were really responding well to the pandemic. Well, in the sense that it hasn't necessarily hurt their bottom line, rather it's potentially increased their market. And you touched on a little bit as an AI for health, telehealth, ed tech as education changes, but also how the clean tech energy sector isn't getting any cuts in investment. And I'm curious to hear your long view on what industries you're excited about. So obviously the market's changed for the next year, 2 years, but maybe 10 years from now, how do you see the market continuing to change and trends continue to develop?
So I really think that, the pandemic hasn't changed the trends that much. It just has accelerated them, which I think is a good thing. For Latin America specifically, I think fintech is one that is going to continue to evolve. Anything that has a resilient industry and access to key services in Latin America. So, of course, finance is one, but agriculture, healthcare, education, water and waste, building, HR technologies, everything that we think that is access to essential services that are not that depending on climate downturns like the ones we're suffering now, and that have some tech side to it, I think are going to be the way to go. Many people in Latin America don't have access to banking, they don't have access to education, they don't have access to clean energy. And I really think that those areas in Latin America are bypassing several cycles that, more developed countries in the US or Europe had to, and go directly to clean tech or go directly to mobile banking instead of having to go through first like in-house banking and then internet banking to get to mobile banking. So I'm excited about them bypassing a lot of, cycles that might not have been as efficient for more developed countries. And I think those are key areas. What I really like about the trends in Latin America is that they are really eyeing global markets now. So it's not only about eyeing the US and make sure that they have their US corporations set up for investment, but also from the get-go, they are tackling global problems. And because they are used to be resilient, they are used to big problems, they are very resourceful because they don't have the same amount of capital, and because they are young and they are, very attuned with making a change in the world and having impact in what they do. I think most of the greatest problems are going to be solved from Latin America, and they're going to be tackled with cool tech companies from Latin America. So I have to concur with the Sequoias and the Andreessen Horowitz going to Mexico and Latin America to figure out what's next there, because I think a lot of the great innovation is going to come from there. It's pretty amazing to see how many software development companies are doing great work and are actually servicing a lot of the US companies, because not only they have great engineers, but also they are much cheaper. And there's the benefit of Latin America is on the same time zones, and they have the same kind of culture. So there's a lot of synergies there. A lot also to do with logistics. I think logistics more than ever is going to be a very hot sector. So anything, Amazon, of course, is doing better than ever with the pandemic, and anything that has to do with efficiency, tracking all that with AI, robotics, all these platforms. Drones, of course, are going to be, very, very important for logistics, not only in terms of, companies like Amazon, but also in the clean tech world where you have to maintain solar panels and, wind towers that are very, very high. So there's a lot of automation there that is going to take place and could be a great area for investing. And as I mentioned before, B2B SaaS, I think, is still a model that, is going to be more resilient to the ups and downs in the market. So a lot of people are investing in those areas, specifically in Latin America.
Yeah, I'm thrilled about all these sectors that you were talking about, and it definitely resonates with me. I think that just seeing the innovation and problem-solving capacity in Latin America, they're definitely going to be developing a lot of solutions. As you just think about the Latin American investment ecosystem, if you were to summarize some of your key takeaways, what are some key things you want the audience to take away?
So the opportunity in Latin America is real. It's happening. You have unicorns in Latin America like Mercado Libre. So there's unicorns there too that never had to step into the U.S. market to become a unicorn. So the opportunity is there. I would say the critical mass of entrepreneurs, technologies, and investors who care. So they have a very good foundation to be growing tremendously. They already did. The ecosystem for the past 10 years have grown tremendously. But I think in the next 10 years, it's going to be exponential. So we hopefully not only will have to witness that, but be a part of that. And the last thing I wanted to say is that, I think we've always been in the position where we thought Latin America needed us. I think now more than ever, we need them. And in terms of how the market is going to grow, even in the US, the Latino population is growing. And, they're going to be a great market opportunity for many people. And last but not least, I wanted to give a shout out of what women have been doing in Latin America too. So from my first GIST trip, where I met Ana Raptis with Amplifica Capital, and to my second GIST trip, where Ana and the ladies from We Exchange, so Marta Cruz with NXTP Lab, and Susana Garcia Robles, who has been with EIB, and she's been very, very involved in financing a lot of the VCs in Latin America, put together the We Exchange program for women entrepreneurs and investing in women entrepreneurs a while back. And now it's grown up to be a huge platform for women investors. And the second year I went to the GIST training, not only I was able to do the GIST training with you, but Ana Raptis with Amplifica put together a breakfast where almost around 50 women investors in Mexico City showed up. So a huge testament to what she's been doing, trying to rally more women into early stage investing. So I think diversity is also getting there, and women are more and more vocal about where they want to invest and put their money in, and to become an integral part of the investment ecosystem in Latin America. And I wanted to give my last shout out to them because they're doing an amazing job.
So again, Juliana, thank you again so much for joining us for this talk. I really appreciate you sharing your insights. To all the listeners, just want to thank y'all for listening. We encourage folks to check this out as well as other GIST innovation talks. We also have a GIST Tech Connect webinar on global healthcare innovations coming up in August. And if you visit www.gistnetwork.org, you can find additional information on that and additional programs. So with that, Juliana, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Summer. It's always a pleasure.